Only special people, she said, and I realized I had paid for a wedding where I didn't exist. I had picked up the phone that morning to ask my son Max when his wedding would be the date I could circle in red on a kitchen calendar, already smudged with reminders to transfer rent and buy groceries for him and Lena. I had pictured the dress hanging ready in my closet, a soft pink that flattered the little bit of color still left in my cheeks. New shoes waiting in their box like a promise. I'd even imagined the photos I would frame on the mantle, Max's arm around me, Lena's veil catching the sun, all of us smiling as if joy were a simple thing. Instead, Lena sat on my sofa, the one I'd bought them when they moved out, and stared at me with a smile that had more edge than warmth. "Oh, we already got married yesterday," she said like she was announcing the weather. "We only invited special people." I turned the word over in my mind, examining it like a foreign coin. Special. I, who had paid their $500 rent for 3 years, who had bought every stick of furniture in their small apartment, who had filled their refrigerator and called it love. I held the phone as if it suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds and watched Max, my only child, avoid my eyes, a boy I had raised alone after his father died. I thought of the $200 dress, how I had touched the fabric and pictured myself at his side. Of the $1,000 I had saved to press into his hands as a wedding gift. Of how I had cleaned the house from top to bottom, planning to host cake and coffee after the ceremony. I thought of the pale pink shoes and the illusion that I mattered. I saw the truth later, as truth often prefers to arrive in photos posted to social media, where the filter gave everything a golden glow. Lena's parents flanked the couple's champagne raised mid-toast, her siblings pressed in cheeks shining with tears or light or both. There was Lena's white dress, which I had helped pay for $800 given last month for personal expenses. There was everything I wasn't supposed to see, and everyone I was not. A week passed with the weight of an unwieldy silence. Then Lena called, and her voice had lost its polished edges. "Renate, the rent is overdue. The landlord says if we don't pay this week, he'll kick us out. You forgot the transfer." I could hear the tremble and the performance behind it, and for a moment I was almost impressed with how seamlessly she could move from disdain to need. I remembered the mornings of oatmeal without fruit, the months I'd chosen beans and rice to stretch the canceled hair appointments, the trips I'd never taken because there was always an emergency, her medications, his car battery, their air conditioner. I remembered too many nights when I lay awake waiting for the message that would begin with please and end with a dollar amount, and yet a calmer voice than I expected came out of me. "Lena," I said, tasting the syllables like they belonged to a stranger. "Didn't I tell you? I only help special people." The silence on the line was sufficient that I could hear my own heartbeat. "Renate, I don't understand," she said. "We were always special to you. You're like a second mom to me. Lies have a way of sounding like lullabies when you want to sleep." I hung up and sat on my bed and cried not the buckling sobs of a broken heart, but the hard, hot tears of someone who has spent too long being grateful for crumbs. I cried for the woman who made herself small to fit inside other people's needs, for the mother who traded boundaries for access, for the patience with which I had waited for love to look like something other than a debit receipt. In the morning, I woke with a different kind of clarity. It wasn't freedom yet. It was the decision to walk toward it. I brewed coffee and spread my bank statements on the kitchen table that had been an altar to my obedience. I added the rent, $500 multiplied by 36 months, $18,000. Groceries and supplies, about $200 a month, $7,200. Gifts, holidays, the shiny currency of being remembered, $3,000. Medical emergencies, $800. The car loan, $2,500. The air conditioner repair, $600. Furniture, $100 or $200. And there were all the little unrecorded rots in the wood of my finances' gas money rides just until Friday loans that slipped into the river and never resurfaced. The pen hovered, then circled the sum I could verify, $33,400. I whispered it out loud as if naming it could release its grip. $33,400 that had not brought me into the circle of special people. $33,400 that might have been trips, art classes, the simple permission to live quietly and well. My phone lit up with Max's name. Then again, with Lena's. Then a text, "Mom, please answer. We need to talk." I deleted it. At 2 p.m, I went for a walk without any purpose that could be tallied on a spreadsheet. I passed the park where Max used to run to me with grass stains like badges of honor. The boy who once smelled like soap and sunshine and declared I was the best mom in the world. Somewhere between then and now, my love had learned to pass through a point-of-sale terminal. Somewhere he had learned that asking is easier than standing on your own legs, that a card is softer than a no. I stopped at the bank, felt the cool blast of air conditioning, and saw Mr. Klein through the glass. He waved. He knew me well by now. He had attended every transfer like a midwife. "Mrs. Richter," he said, when I sat down, "what can we do for you today?" His voice was kind enough that I felt a ridiculous urge to cry again, so I smiled instead. "I need to cancel all automatic transfers," I said. "And I want to protect my accounts. I don't want anyone else to have access to my money." He looked surprised, but not shocked, as if he had expected this day would eventually arrive. "Are you sure?" he asked gently. "Did something happen?" "What happened," I said, "is that I remembered. My money is mine." My phone vibrated insistently while he processed the paperwork. I turned it off and left the bank lighter as if I had checked a heavy suitcase onto a different flight. When I got home, there were 3 cars in front of my porch, Max's, Lena's, and a third that was too polished for anyone in our family. I could see through the lace curtains movement inside my house. They had keys. Of course they did. I opened the door to find Max with his head in his hands, Lena pacing like a caged cat, and a man in a gray suit calmly sorting through my paperwork on the dining table. "What is happening here?" I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Lena threw me a look that tried to be both urgent and tender. "Renat, thank God. We need to talk. This is Dr. Fisher from a family law firm. He's here because we're concerned about you." Concern. They wore the word like perfume. "My situation?" I asked. "I'm doing perfectly well." Max finally lifted his face. The boy I'd memorized had grown into a man with worry wearing his mouth. "Mom," he said, "the bank told us you canceled the transfers. And Mr. Klein said he's blocked our access. We don't understand why." Dr. Fisher approached with a hand outstretched, the smile professional and precise. "Mrs. Richter," he said, "your children are worried about your mental well-being. They've asked me to assess the situation and discuss a temporary power of attorney that would allow them to manage your finances until you're feeling like yourself again." I did not shake his hand. I gathered my papers from under his fingers as carefully as if they were gold leaf. "Those are my private documents," I said. "You have no right to touch them." "Mom," Max said, using a tone I had heard on the phone with call center agents, "we're worried. This isn't like you. Cutting us off without explanation, not answering calls, installing cameras. We think maybe it's loneliness. At your age, that can cause confusion." Lena stepped close with her trained gentleness and reached for my hand. "Renate, honey, we love you. We're just trying to help." It rolled over me, then an instinct that finally lifted its head. They were laying the foundation to say, I couldn't manage my own life. They were going to try to take control of everything I had left. "I am not confused," I said, and the sentence was a door swinging shut. "I am clearer than I have been in years." Now, leave my house." "Doctor," Fisher's voice softened into apology. "Mrs. Richter," he said, "your children have a legal right to intervene if they believe your capacity is impaired. We've documented concerning behaviors." I laughed not prettily. "Like what canceling payments I have no obligation to make. Declining to fund your lives." Lena's face snapped like a mask, shifting just for an instant. "We never treated you badly," she said. "You're part of our family. Everything you have will belong to us one day anyway. We're just trying to manage it responsibly." There it was, said out loud, the future tense my sister Diana had warned me about, the quiet sentences people share when they think you won't notice. I pointed to the door. "Out." Mom, Max tried again. "We have obligations. Rent, the car payment, the card you co-signed." "Those are your obligations," I said flatly. "Doctor," Fisher placed a folder on my table. "A temporary power of attorney," he said. "Just until you feel better." I tossed it in the trash without opening it and watched his eyes widen a fraction. Lena's voice rose to a thin keening. "You can't do this to us," she said. "We were counting on you." "Yes," I said. I noticed. They left, Max adding a parting shot that was less threat than prophecy. "You're going to end up alone," he called over his shoulder. "And when you need someone, there won't be anyone." I closed the door against the echo of his words and stood inside a silence new enough to be exhilarating. It wasn't that I wasn't alone before. It was that now I had chosen it. That night, I didn't sleep much. Adrenaline marched through my veins like soldiers. I got up before dawn, put on my good coat, and drove to Mr. Weber's office, an attorney who had handled my husband's will years ago, and looked at old women the way a doctor looks at a patient, as someone to protect, not to plunder. "This," he said, after I recounted the past days, "is textbook elder financial abuse. The entry into your home, the pressure for power of attorney, the attempt to question your capacity. None of this is unusual, and all of it is serious." We moved through my records together. He whistled when he saw the figure I had circled. 33,400, he said. "In 3 years. He looked up at me. "Mrs. Richter, you've been financing 2 entire adults." "Not anymore," I said. "We made a plan. I would change my locks, install a security system, move a portion of my savings to a new bank where Mr. Klein wasn't on friendly terms with my son, and most importantly, document everything." That afternoon at the hardware store, Mr. Summer rang up the high security locks without comment, and his son, Ethan, who installed security systems, came out to the car to schedule. "Tomorrow," I told them. First thing. I was just turning out of the parking lot when a call from an unknown number vibrated in my bag. "Renat, it's Lena," she said, breathless. "Please don't hang up. Let's be civilized. We're planning a special dinner for you to celebrate our wedding. We can do it at your house. Cook like we used to." "How much rent do you owe?" I asked. A pause, then the numbers reluctant and exact. 2 months, she said. 1,000. "Do you miss me?" I asked, "or my money?" Another pause. "Both," she said finally, with the kind of honesty that can only be called shameless. "You're important to us." "If I were important," I said, "you would have wanted me there." I hung up and turned the phone off. Then I drove to the salon where Cynthia had cut my hair for years and watched myself transform in the mirror until I could see a woman behind my eyes. "You look free," she said when she finished. I learned a new word, I told her. "No." When I got home, a woman about my age was sitting on my front step, hands wrapped around a travel mug. "Mrs. Richter," she said, standing as I approached. "I'm Eleanor Brooks. I live next door. I heard voices yesterday. Are you all right?" Her face held the kind of concern that doesn't expect anything in return. I invited her in. Over coffee, I told her the story. She nodded at the right moments, helped herself to a small biscuit without apology, and when I finished, smiled like she had been waiting for my arrival. "I went through this 5 years ago," she said. "My daughter had a dozen scripts for getting what she wanted." I cut her off. It was awful for a while. But then she found herself. So did I. "Do you think Max will ever forgive me?" "Maybe," she said, unflinching. "Maybe not. That's not the question you should be asking. What is, do you forgive yourself?" The locks clicked into place the next morning, and the cameras blinked like tiny eyes that belonged to me. Ethan showed me how to pull up the feed on my phone. If anyone tries to come in without permission, he said the alarm notifies the police. I thanked him and spent the afternoon doing something I hadn't done in too long, calling my sister. At last, Diana said, when she heard my voice, "I was starting to think Max had you chained to an ATM." She listened to the whole story without interrupting. "Renat," she said finally, "every time we spoke, you recited numbers like prayers. I wanted to tell you that he doesn't talk about you like a son missing his mother. He talks about you like a service. And Lena, she speaks of you in the future tense, like a windfall waiting for probate." The words landed sharp and precise. I don't know whether they hurt more because I suspected them already, or because hearing them out loud made them real. Cameras showed me 3 cars idling in front of my house later that day. I watched from the kitchen while Max, Lena, and 2 people I didn't recognize argued beside my mailbox like actors in a scene blocking their lines. This time, I didn't go outside. I called Mr. Weber instead. He arrived with the police and a temporary restraining order he'd requested that morning. "You can't call the police on your own," son Max shouted, while the officers urged them back to their cars. "Family doesn't threaten to get power of attorney," I said. "Family doesn't search through paperwork they didn't ask permission to touch." Their faces receded down the street in the rearview mirror, and my hands shook only a little. Eleanor brought lasagna that night and introduced me to her friends from the garden club, Maria, who had set boundaries with her brother, Carmen, who had cut ties with a daughter who used money to measure love, and Alfreda, 80 and clear-eyed and wise. We sat around my table eating and comparing notes like women studying for an exam. "There's a manual," Maria said dryly. Chapter 1. Make her feel indispensable. Chapter 2. Create constant emergencies. Chapter 3. If she resists, question her sanity. We laughed until the laugh turned wet at the edges. The next morning, a woman in a neat blazer appeared at my door with an official badge. "Mrs. Richter," she said. "I'm Ms. Schmidt from Senior Services. We've received a report that you may be at risk. I need to conduct a wellness check." I asked for her ID, invited her inside, and called Mr. Weber. He arrived 20 minutes later with a folder of documents and a face like a closed door. Ms. Schmidt began with the phrases you learn when a file lands on your desk: abrupt changes, paranoia, isolation, refusal to accept help. She had been briefed in the language of concern, but the details came from the mouths of people who wanted my bank account more than they wanted my company. Mr. Weber laid out receipts like cards in a magic trick. He showed the list of automatic transfers, the receipts for groceries, the text messages asking for money. He showed the letter that Dr. Fisher had attempted to slip beneath my nose, disguised as kindness. He showed the total I had circled. Ms. Schmidt's pen slowed, then stilled. "Do you manage your own finances?" she asked. "I do." "Do you live independently?" "I do." "Do you take medication, vitamins, aspirin after I garden too long?" "That's all." "Do you have friends?" I gestured toward the neighbor's mug sitting on the sink. "Yes." She closed her file and looked up at me as a person, not a case. "I see no indication of incapacity or risk," she said. "I'll close this." She left, and I allowed myself a moment of relief before Mr. Weber said, "They're escalating. Expect the next step." It came sooner than even he expected: a formal filing in family court to have me declared incompetent to appoint a guardian, my son, to take control of my life. I learned the names of the witnesses in their petition, Lena, of course. Mr. Davis, a neighbor across the street who never forgave me for saying no when he asked if his nephew could park in my driveway, and Mr. Green, the pharmacist who had always been polite. We went to the pharmacy together, and Mr. Green turned the color of a beet when he saw the statement he'd allowed Lena to put in front of him. She said it was for insurance, he stammered. She asked if you took any medications. I told her vitamins and aspirin. She said that was irresponsible. I shouldn't have signed without reading carefully. He typed up a declaration apologizing for the misunderstanding. Mr. Davis, on the other hand, answered the door with a scowl and a story to match. She installed cameras, he told us triumphantly. She has strangers over. She yells at her family in the street. I installed cameras because my son and daughter-in-law entered my home without permission, I said. The strangers are called friends. And the yelling happened the day they tried to force me to sign away my life. He shrugged. Sounds crazy to me. There are some people who prefer their first story so much that the truth feels like an inconvenience. Mr. Weber scheduled an evaluation with Dr. Moore, a psychiatrist, with a reputation for being both kind and precise. She asked me to draw a clock, subtract sevens from 100, remember a list of words, explain what I would do if I found a letter on the ground addressed to someone else. We discussed my finances, my routines, my fears, my son. Your cognitive function is excellent, she told me at the end. You're in remarkable shape. What you're experiencing is not a decline. It's a reclamation. Then why does it hurt so much? I asked. Because letting go of a dream always does. Eleanor gathered the garden club when I came home with the results. They offered to testify. We've watched you get clearer every day, Cynthia said. Better boundaries look like brick walls to the people who used to walk through them, Elfrida added, and we wrote that down to read again later. The morning of the hearing, I put on a black suit and a string of pearls my late husband Robert had given me on my 40th birthday. I felt him like a steady hand at my back. The courtroom was wood and echo and old air. Max avoided my gaze in the hallway. Lena met my eyes and smiled something like a challenge. Their lawyer was a man who had probably said the word unfit so often it sounded to him like mercy. He began with gravitas. Your Honor, Mrs. Richter has shown a clear decline. She's impulsively cut off support for her family, isolated herself under the influence of new acquaintances, and refuses appropriate medical and legal help. The story they told made my liberation sound like illness. Then they called Lena. She cried without smudging her mascara. She's like a second mother to me, she said. Watching her slip away has been devastating. Mr. Weber's questions sliced politely. When was the last time you called her without asking for money? She blinked. We speak all the time. A specific date I don't recall. Did you exclude her from your wedding? It was intimate. Did you tell her you only invited special people? That was out of context. He turned to the judge. Is there a context where that sentence is kind? Max took the stand, and I saw every birthday cake I baked, every midnight drive to pick him up, every fever I soothed with a cool cloth gathered into a man who wanted my signature more than my stories. Mom has always been generous, he said, but she's become paranoid and erratic. How much money have you received from her in the last 3 years? Mr. Weber asked softly. Max shifted. I'm not sure. Would $33,400 ring a bell she likes to give? Do you need your 71-year-old mother to pay your rent? His jaw tightened. We were struggling, Mr. Davis testified. So did Dr. Lehman, their psychiatrist, who suggested that my refusal to undergo their evaluation indicated lack of insight. Then it was our turn. Mr. Green apologized to the court for signing a document he hadn't understood. Mr. Summer and Ethan testified about the locks and cameras, the calm way I had asked questions about security. Cynthia and Maria and Carmen described dinners and garden club meetings and my new habit of saying no without apology Eleanor described a woman who had been bullied into confusing love with obligation and was busy untangling the difference. Dr. Moore placed her report in the record and said, "Mrs. Richter's cognitive function is excellent. Her decisions are rational and consistent. She is not only capable of managing her affairs, she is doing so prudently." Then I took the stand. I told my story not as a list of transactions, but as a map of how a person disappears in small payments, in silence that buys temporary peace. I talked about the wedding. I wasn't invited to the sofa I had paid for, and wasn't welcome to sit upon the day they brought a lawyer into my home to claim my kindness as incompetence. "Why did you stop financing your son and his wife?" Mr. Weber asked. "Because I understood that what I had been given was not love," I said. "It was access. I was an ATM with a beating heart, and I had to choose whether to protect my heart." Max's lawyer tried to catch me in contradictions. He asked how much cash I had in my purse, whether I knew today's date, what the rent in my neighborhood might be. I answered each question clearly, not with triumph, but with the steady relief of someone who finally recognizes herself. When the judge left to deliberate, the courtroom fell into a hush so palpable that even the benches seemed to hold their breath. He returned 2 hours later, with a face that did not betray anything until he spoke. After reviewing all the evidence, he said, "This court finds that Mrs. Renate Richter is fully competent to manage her affairs. The petition for guardianship is denied. Furthermore, the court recommends that the petitioners refrain from further attempts to interfere with Mrs. Richter's finances. There are indications of financial motivations that do not align with the stated concern for her welfare." The gavel sounded like a full stop. Max looked down at his hands. Lena's mouth thinned to a line that would have cut paper. Mr. Weber squeezed my shoulder, and for a second, my vision blurred so that the polished wood and gold seal behind the judge flowed into soft watercolors. That night, Eleanor brought a bottle of champagne, and my living room filled with the laughter of women who had learned to choose themselves. "Today, you didn't just win a case," Elfrida said, raising her glass. "You won your life back." I slept that night without dreaming. In the morning, I went to see Robert. His grave had waited patient as granite. I brushed away leaves, set new flowers in the holder, and sat down on the damp grass. I forgot myself for a while, I told him. I thought being a good mother meant covering the sun so he wouldn't feel heat. You would have reminded me to let him sweat. The wind stroked the birches. I took that as agreement. In the months that followed, I sold my house too many rooms for one woman and too many ghosts for peace. My new apartment downtown has morning light that turns the walls to honey, and a balcony that overlooks a line of trees the city has the good sense to keep. I donated half of what I had left to organizations that train people to recognize the early warning signs of elder financial abuse. With the other half, I learned how to spend money on myself without apology. I took an art class and stood in front of a canvas that did not ask me for rent, but asked me to see. I bought a suitcase that rolls easily and filled it with linen and a silk scarf and a small tin of watercolor paints. I stood in front of the Parthenon, dizzy with heat and history. I cried in a museum in Amsterdam in front of a painting of a woman pouring milk because her quiet concentration looked like a prayer. I took the train to little towns, ate plum tarts in places where no one knew my name, and learned again to savor a meal without calculating who else should eat from it. I never heard from Max and Lena again. News arrived from other mouths. They had moved to a smaller apartment. Lena had taken a job her first. Max had sold his car. Perhaps they learned what my generosity had tried and failed to teach them, that adulthood is a country you enter only when you stop looking for someone else's passport. Sometimes guilt knocks softly late at night, questioning whether the line I drew was too sharp, whether a kinder mother would have made softer choices. But then I remember the look on my son's face when he brought a lawyer into my home, the way he stood beside that man, as if the law could replace love, and the guilt quiets itself like a child who understands that the story cannot be rewritten backward. When it rains, I stand at my balcony door and watch the city blur. I think about the woman I was, a woman who believed love was a ledger, and the person with the most zeros at the end won. She was tired and kind and afraid, and I respect her as an ancestor now. But she is not me anymore. Once Eleanor and I sat on a bench at the botanical garden watching a mother chase a toddler who screamed with delight and rage, which at that age are indistinguishable. "Do you think he'll call?" Eleanor asked without looking at me. "Do you want him to?" I considered the grammar of it. "I want him to be well," I said finally. "And I want to be well." Those two things are not necessarily the same. When my birthday came, I am 72 now, I threw myself a small party with lemon cake and a cut glass pitcher of iced tea and a vase of gladiolus that looked like joy standing up. Diana flew in for the weekend, and we walked along the river, pointing at houses with better gardens than ours, and deciding like children which dogs we would borrow if we could. My gifts were unwrapped in the easy order of friendship: an apron stamped with oranges, a book of poems that say everything in fewer words than I ever could, a small brooch shaped like a swallow. "Will you ever forgive him?" Diana asked in that late hour when the plates are stacked, and women feel safe saying things too fragile for daylight. "I forgive the boy he was," I said. "But I refuse to pretend the man he is will be changed by my refusal to protect myself. The best things I have learned this year are simple and costly. First, this: that love which must be bought is not love, and the moment you stop paying the balance due is silence. Second, that a no placed carefully in the doorway keeps a house standing. And third, that freedom is sometimes an ache before it becomes a comfort, the way stretching hurts if you haven't done it in years. I think often about that first sentence Lena gave me like a gift wrapped in barbed wire. Only special people. It was meant to stab, and it did. But it also cut loose the cord around my chest. It separated the people who measure your worth by what you can give from the ones who sit with you on steps without asking for a cup of sugar or a check. In the quiet now, I sometimes see Max as a little boy asleep in the back seat after soccer practice, his mouth soft, his hair sweaty against his forehead. I understand that I did the best I could with the tools I had at the time. If I overgave, it was because I thought I had to be both father and mother and savior and friend. Now I know better. Now I know that offering steady ground is not the same as building a cushioned prison. If he calls one day, I will listen. I will say, "Tell me about your life," and I will not reach for my purse. If he asks for forgiveness, I will decide then what shape that forgiveness should take. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks. You can open them, but you should be the one holding the key. On a warm evening in late summer, Eleanor and I planted herbs on my balcony: rosemary and thyme basil that releases its perfume if you brush it. We drank tea and watched swifts pinwheeling above the roofs. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked after a while. "All this I regret not doing it sooner," I said. "I regret the years I spent trying to buy my way into a version of family that didn't include me the time I could have given myself. But I don't regret waking up." She nodded. Someone on the street below started playing a saxophone haltingly, like a person practicing a new language. We listened, and I closed my eyes, and in that small, priceless moment, I understood what my life had become. Not a ledger, but a song I was finally learning to play. If my story finds you at the edge of your own thresholds, hear this from me, a woman who mistook obedience for love until obedience swallowed her voice. You are allowed to ask what the love around you is made of. You are allowed to say no without apologizing. You are allowed to step back from the drama other people keep casting you in and write a part for yourself that has clean lines and rooms for quiet joy. You are allowed to choose yourself not because family doesn't matter, but because you are family too. And if someone tells you that only special people are invited, look at your reflection in the nearest pane of glass, smile at her, and remember, you have always been special enough to choose who gets a seat at your table. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this story moved you or made you think, please like the video, share it with someone who might need it. Subscribe for more true stories of strength and self-discovery, and tell me in the comments what part resonated with you most.